Welcome to our presentation, Staying Positive in the Face of Negativity. This is another 30-minute Thursday. We just had one last week and we have another one today. I'm Jamie Machik with the Nicolet Federated Library System in Green Bay, and I'm happy all of you are joining us this morning for this presentation. Our presenter today is Stephanie Glime, and she is the Library Services Associate for Brown County Library, and she works at the Central Branch, the main branch of Brown County. So Stephanie, whenever you are ready.
Okay, thank you so much, Jamie. I just want to say good morning and hi to everyone, and I'd like to welcome you all to Staying Positive in the Face of Negativity, and thank you all for attending this session. So, as Jamie mentioned, my name is Stephanie Glime, and I'm a Library Service Associate at the Brown County Library. My role here at the library consists of many duties. I assist customers at our books, movies, music, and more desk, helping with readers advisory, technology questions, research, and many other duties. I also work with our volunteers at the library and help coordinate with nursing homes and assisted living facilities in the area for our outreach delivery program. I have been with Brown County for almost 18 years, and I love my job. Every day is something new and exciting, including my first ever live webinar presentation, so please bear with me today. In today's presentation, I am going to give a general overview of how we can all try and give the best customer service possible, even in those tough customer situations. Now, we all know that good customer service is crucial, but once you get down to trying to define what goes into it, not everyone is always on the same page. To some, good customer service is as simple as solving problems and offering solutions in a quick and expedient manner. To others, it means overall pleasantness and politeness from those who represent the front lines of the company. But now and then, we all have those tough customers who can be hard to please. So in today's presentation, we will cover how to handle these tough customer situations, the 4 different types of customers, how to deal with complaints, and providing above and beyond customer service. So as I started preparing for this webinar, I came across this webcomic and wanted to share it with you all before we get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation. So if you all would just like to take a moment to read it. The first topic we're going to cover is tough customer situations. Many of us may encounter these on a daily basis, and we may feel overwhelmed after our interaction or may not always say or do the right thing. Just always remember that most upset customers can be fixed, and that some of your most unhappy customers are your greatest sources of learning. When dealing with upset customers, we want to keep some certain things in mind. First off, you always want to try and begin with a positive attitude. Using the power of a smile to reverse the tone of the situation, always try and greet the customers and make eye contact. Also, remember to try and be as open and friendly as possible. Second, let the customer vent. What I mean by this is listen to the customer. Remember that most of the time their anger is not personal. These customers are angry because there's a problem. They simply want 2 things: to express their feelings and to have their problems solved. Be empathetic. Always be polite, even when the customer isn't. Try and keep your tone as pleasant as possible. Demonstrate that you understand. Always pay specific attention to the details as to why your customer or patron is angry. Apologize to the patron and relate that you understand why they are upset. And finally, begin your active problem solving. If you feel that you know what will make your customer happy, tell them how you'd like to correct the situation. If you're not sure you know what the customer wants from you, or if they happen to resist your proposed solution, maybe give them the power to try and resolve things. Ask them to identify what will make them happy. Working with the public, we deal with many different personality types and a wide range of customers on a daily basis. Of course, each customer is unique, but there are 4 types that I'm going to talk about today, and they range from the argumentative customer to the abusive customer. Now, the argumentative customer likes to feel that they are in control. If you try to rob them of this control, they become more argumentative. Keeping in mind that some people thrive on arguments. They are aggressive and probably will disagree with or question everything you say or propose. Your first instinct may be to argue back, but don't fall into this trap. Some solutions when working with an argumentative customer: speak softly. Again, don't argue back, and always take notes. Number each problem as you're listening to them so that it can rest later. Second, you want to let the customer be in control. If you give the customer some control by asking a question, they are liable to kind of ease up a little bit. The threatening customer. The threatening customer typically has direct or indirect threats of harm or injury. They may use words or gestures which create a reasonable fear of harm or injury, and sometimes this may create prolonged or frequent shouting, and this can lead to a reasonable fear of harm or maybe even injury. Some solutions when dealing with a threatening customer: try not to overreact. Call the police if you find that it's necessary. You want to look for signs, again, of drug and alcohol use. If they are under the influence of alcohol, you typically might be able to smell a little something on them. And another really good step is to try and evaluate the customer's ability to make good on the threat. If you see that it's kind of escalating, again, always go back. You have every right to call the police, and they will come in and assist. The next type of customer is the no solution customer. Now, you may ask what I mean by the no solution customer. The no solution customer is the customer where there is just no answer to the equation. So sometimes you just have to say no to them. But if you do it right, you can still get a thank you for your service if you explain why it can't be done. So give details, but concentrate on the positive and don't dwell on the negative. Instead of saying, I can't help you, say, we can't do that, but we can do this. So some solutions: don't quote policy. Never say, because it's the law. Give the customer some background and some explanation. Avoid being patronizing. Never talk down to the customer. Always try and keep your comments on a professional adult level. Offer an alternative if you can. Try and provide alternative ways of approaching a particular subject. If the customer needs an example, come up with one. If he or she would prefer a step-by-step explanation, go for it. It's important to meet the client in the middle. Don't just say no or you have to. Try to help the customer find solutions to the problem. Again, explain your reasons. And finally, avoid dwelling on the negative. The abusive customer. Now, the abusive customer, they may use abuse as an attempt to intimidate you. Your most powerful position when dealing with an abusive customer is to stick to the fundamental issues at hand and remain as calm as possible. Solutions to the abusive customer: talk quietly. If the customer is yelling and screaming at you, talk a little bit softer so that he or she has to be quieter to hear you. Also, you want to try and talk at a normal pace. If you start to talk too quickly, sometimes that can make matters worse. Try and be as direct as possible. So, for instance, if the customer is using abusive language or making threats, be direct. Address the client by name and say, for example, "Mr. Smith, I understand that you are upset, but do not use that language or threaten me." You want to explain the consequences calmly and directly. So let the customer know the consequences. So, for instance, when you use that language, Mr. Smith, it makes it impossible for me or anybody else to assist you. And finally, try to never take it personally. Although angry customers take their frustration out on you, they know that you did not cause the problem. Allowing them to vent about their problems, but don't take it personally. Listen to the story without interrupting, and then try and find the best solution or way to help them.
Stephanie?
Yeah?
I just want to interrupt quickly. Audience, for those of you listening in, I'm curious if you wouldn't mind if any of you have a customer you'd like to mention in the chat box. I'm curious, do any of you encounter these customers weekly, or who would you say you encounter the most? Is it the argumentative, the threatening, the no customer, or the abusive? And how have you handled some of these situations? And I'd like to share some of these responses in the chat area with everybody. So if you have anything you want to share, please do that. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Jamie. So no one likes dealing with difficult customers, but what happens when your favorite customer, or even simply someone who's being anything but rude, has a complaint to get off their chest? Customers of all kinds are bound to share a complaint with your business one day, so why not be prepared for how to deal with it? Below, I'm going to share some tips and ideas to help you deal with customer complaints. One method I like to think of is what I like to call the 3 B's. The first B would be agreeable. So keep in mind that nobody ever complains without a reason. And if they are complaining, you always want to try and act as calm as possible and try to look at the issue from your customer's perspective. The second B would be attentive. So avoid getting defensive and try and repeat back what you are hearing to show that you are listening. The third B would be appreciative. Let the customer know you hear what he or she is saying, and if you or your company made a mistake, simply admit it and explain your misunderstanding. So as you may have realized, listening is part of every daily activity. Whether you are young or old, or you study or work, you have to listen in order to communicate. Remember that customers don't expect you to be perfect, but they do expect you to fix things when they go wrong. One other technique I like to use when dealing with difficult customers is the PRC technique. The P in the PRC technique stands for paraphrase. This is always remember to emphasize the key points and a shift to addressing just these points when responding back to what you may have heard. So for example, I would say, Mr. Smith, I need to make sure I understand what you've said. The R stands for reflect. Allow the patron to argue, disagree, or add to what you just said. And C stands for close. Make sure you express appreciation for the patron's time and mention any action you agreed upon. So listed on the next couple slides are some myths and facts I came across about listening. We'll kind of go through each one and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So listening, myth. Listening and hearing are the same process, when in fact, listening is a conscious, selective process while hearing is an involuntary act. So having good hearing does not necessarily make you an effective listener. It is perfectly possible to have good hearing but poor listening skills. Myth. Speakers are able to command listening. Fact. Speakers cannot make a person really listen. So good listening is not necessarily a skill that we are born with, and it's not a natural gift. Without practice and training, we are unlikely to be particularly effective listeners. Believing that you are a better listener than others is unlikely to be true unless you have taken the time to learn and practice your listening skills over a period of time. Myth. Listening is easy and requires little energy. And the fact, active listeners undergo the same physiological changes as a person jogging. People do not automatically become better listeners as they get older. Without practice and consciously thinking about listening, there's no reason why listening will improve. It may actually get worse. It's also very easy to pick up bad habits for listening in much the same way as it is to pick up bad habits for other skills that we use frequently. And the final myth, hearing ability determines listening ability. And fact, listening happens mentally between the ears. So there's no actual link between traditional measures of cognitive ability and intelligence in how well we listen. Although being bright and having a good vocabulary may make it easier to process information and gain understanding, these qualities do not necessarily make clever people better listeners. So what does this all mean? Listening takes energy and is a conscious effort. Every customer deserves our fullest and undivided attention. Listening actually completes the hearing process by understanding the meaning of the information. True leaders listen to understand. Are you really listening to understand? So most large companies aspire to have a reputation for exceptional customer service. However, only a select few manage to earn it. On the next couple slides, I've listed some companies that go above and beyond when providing customer service. If any of you have any examples of when you or one of your coworkers provided above and beyond customer service, I would love for you all to share in the question box. Festival Foods. So Festival Foods' motto goes off the boomerang effect. And what the boomerang effect is, They ask themselves every time a customer comes in, will it bring the guest back? One tool they use with the boomerang effect is called 10 tiling. Now, 10 tiling is based on the concept that each tile of flooring is 1 foot square, and the employees at festival are expected to greet the shoppers within 10 feet with a hello or how are you doing or can I help you? Now, one tool they use to help measure this 10 tiling is what they call DYFET. And DYFET stands for, did you find everything today? Another tool that they use is CHANT, C-H-A-N-T. That stands for keeping in mind that customers have a name too. Now, how can we apply some of this to maybe some of the libraries that we work at? A couple tools I think would be helpful would be the 10-foot guideline. So if you have tiled floor in your building, you might, within 10 feet, want to say hello or how are you doing to one of the patrons that comes or enters the building. Another great tool that I think they use is the DYFET, asking your patrons, did you find everything today? Is there anything else I can help you with? Another tool, acknowledge the presence of customers. Just say hi. Ask how their day is going. And finally, greet the customer through words or behavior such as smiling. Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines motto, dedication to the highest quality of customer service delivered with a sense of warmth, friendliness, individual pride, and company spirit. So at Southwest Airlines, customers are always referred to by their first names whenever possible. So their employees like to treat the customers like friends and family. Now, the employees at Southwest Airlines also send birthday cards, and they invite people to events sponsored by the airlines. They give away free tickets and bonuses if there's ever a problem or any sort of, a flight delay or anything like that. Now, looking at what Southwest does, how can we apply some of that to maybe your library? One thing I would recommend is to always try and use a first name when you can. If you're able to, flexibility in relieving some fines. And just because you're helping the person in front of you doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge the other patrons waiting for service in line, even by a smile. And finally, Nordstrom's. Nordstrom's motto is use your best judgment in all situations. Now, if you use your best judgment in all situations, Nordstrom has no additional rules. So Nordstrom salespeople are to help customers leave as happy as possible. For instance, salespeople are taught to walk your bag purchase around the counter to you versus just handing it across the counter. And a Nordstrom salesperson rarely points. So if you have a question about where something is located, they typically walk you to where it is. So again, how can we apply some of this to maybe the library where you work? You always want to try and walk somebody to what they need. So instead of pointing, oh, the book is over on that shelf or magazine or DVD, it would be best to walk the customer to the shelf. Another really important aspect that they use at Barnes & Noble is to actually hand the item to the customer. Try not to point or use open hand gestures, and try and remain as visible as possible to customers at all times. Now, great companies will not only do all the things that we've talked about, but some will compensate you for your trouble by adding on something extra. This is really what cements a customer's loyalty. Empower your employees to make it right with the customer. So I want you all to remember that first impressions are critical and that assumptions are typically made within the first 7 seconds. Keeping in mind, am I friendly, approachable, organized. Body language is 40% more important than what comes out of your mouth. To make a first impression, always think of your attitude, posture, eye contact, and smile as you speak. And remember, even if you can't smile in the face of negativity, at the very least, don't frown. So I just want to thank you all for listening today to the webinar. And if anybody has anything that they would like to share on how maybe you manage to stay positive when faced with negativity, I would love to hear your thoughts. And if anybody has any questions, I can be reached at the email address listed on the slide. And I hope you all enjoyed the webinar and have a wonderful afternoon.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, we'd be curious. We have a few minutes left. We'd be curious in hearing from you. How do you manage to stay positive when you encounter a negative patron or a negative customer, or maybe it's not even dealing with the customer. Maybe it's something you do personally or internally to stay positive, when you're at the library. I know, Stephanie, you work at the front line a lot. You are, for those of you who have not been to the Brown County Library downtown, in one of the entrances where you walk in, Stephanie, usually you are one of the first people they see. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
We are one of the main service points.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, what you've been there a long time. So what tools have you found to be most helpful in staying positive?
Well, for me, I feel that body language is very important, and always being visible, keeping a smile on your face, just very open to the public. We have long shifts on desk, and if there are times when you may have this difficult customer. If you need to, take a step in the back office, or take a quick walk outside, get some fresh air, and just kind of refresh yourself and come back, and you just kind of keep going with it.
Yeah, a few comments came in. Lucy said, I think getting out from behind a desk, any desk, is super important when helping customers. And you did mention that in one of your final slides. And I do believe, when you talked about Barnes & Noble actually handing the book to their customer, I have read something where people are even more apt to buy the book there if they're actually handed the book. So that could apply to libraries as well. If they're actually handed the book or the DVD or the movie, maybe they're more likely to check it out at our library. Patty says sometimes you need to walk away after a negative moment to get your composure back after an experience, and I would agree with that. Stephanie, before we close, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. Can you think of a time, and maybe this happened more in your earlier days of working at the library, where you dealt with a negative customer or a negative situation and you were like, wow, I really could have handled that better, or I didn't handle that as well as I thought? Because you did say at the beginning that we can learn from these situations, and I do think that's true. Does anything come to your mind when it comes to that?
I have definitely had lots of experience with difficult customers, and there have been many times, I will say, that I haven't always done the right thing. Either the customer still left upset, or they just weren't happy with the answer that I gave them. And for me, it was best to just go sit down and maybe talk to either another coworker or my supervisor and just kind of lay it out on the line and say, this is what happened. Can you maybe share some ideas with me as to what I should have done better, or how I can be more positive in the future? But yeah, I have had a lot of experience with that, and it's hard. You feel bad after, if they leave upset or you can't give them the right information, but just try and do the best that we can, and like I said, every instance is a learning experience.
Excellent. Well, on that note, I want to mention that our next webinar coming up is on February 17th. It's called Who's in Charge Here? Harnessing the Power of Homeschoolers. So it's going to focus on homeschoolers, and you can register for that on our website. And I want to remind all of you that the recording and slides will be available later today on our website. So thank you again, Stephanie, for the great information. And I want to thank all of you for listening in and providing your insight. I hope you all have a great day and a great rest of your week. So long.